My God, their brains are complete holes. Their brains are so smooth. They're incredibly smooth. The smoothest of brain.
Let's mold in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
Some New York City kids are not getting into school this September because that's the law. The law says if your kids don't have their shots for dangerous diseases like mumps, measles, and polio, they aren't getting into school. The law also says they must go to school. So you have no choice. Get your kids their shots. Call 349-2664 to get free shots now. Remember, no shots, no school. It's the law.
Hell yeah. We need more information like that. Chad, I wanted to show you something. It's time for us to make fun of Jimmy Dore. It's a thing, Chad. It's happening. It's happening.
So watch how he gets this wrong. We're talking about the global south not wanting the vaccines, and watch what he has to say.
On the left have been concerned that vaccines are not getting to many third world countries. However, I believe that there also is a great deal of skepticism among those populations where they're saying that they don't want it, especially in Africa. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on there. Why do you think that there is so much vaccine hesitancy in the global south?
Global south, there is overwhelming demand for vaccines. Overwhelming. They're pleading for the West to stop hoarding the vaccines and to let them have them so that they can overcome the terrible effect of non-vaccination. That is the overwhelming majority.
Which is just objectively true. And the big problem is that the major vaccine manufacturers are not fulfilling their promises for vaccines. And in fact, Moderna's vaccine is a government-funded vaccine whose ideas were developed by government scientists, and Moderna was given the intellectual property. Given it. They did. So it was fully funded by the government, by government scientists, given to Moderna, and they have not delivered one vaccine to the international efforts. COVAX, thank you. They have not delivered one vaccine to COVAX. I saw a very good post about this, but it is absolutely batshit wrong that the main problem with getting vaccines right now in the global south is because of vaccine hesitancy. It's literal lack of vaccines. You lying sack of shit. Before he even says one lie, that's the actual issue. Here's the graph you wanted. Soon 219, literal hero. Soon 219, literal hero. 10, my favorite chatter. Turns out big public pledges to donate COVID vaccines are mostly PR stunts, and rich countries have dramatically failed to deliver on their promises. The blue is promises, and the yellow is actual deliveries. So this isn't exactly the chart I wanted. I was talking about the companies because they're the people that are actually manufacturing these vaccines. But look at this, chat. The United States of America promised 1.25 billion vaccines, I believe, or 1.1 billion vaccine doses, and they've given less than 250 million. And it's not like the Europeans or UK or Japan or Canada is any better. Everybody is just garbage. Although it looks like Japan is the closest to their individual promise. They've given more, closer, the largest percentage towards actually fulfilling their promise. In general, do you believe that intellectual property should be abolished? I think that question, I would say that private property should be abolished. Intellectual property is an element of that. Although I believe there should be a right of credit and publicity, right? So if somebody creates something, they should receive the benefit, whether it's an intellectual product or a good, the workers should receive a benefit from that. But that's not what our intellectual property regime. I'm not defending our current capitalist intellectual property regime, which is the intellectual property is stolen by profiteers. Some Western countries are trying to get stuff in return of the vaccine. Denmark gifted 250,000 vaccines to Rwanda while they have plans to set up a refugee center in Rwanda. Wow, that's pretty gross. All right, let's go back to what Jimmy Dore hasn't said anything, so I was malding before he even said anything. Devo Pruitt, exactly. That's why I've always said that charity is not the solution to our problems. It's a salve that we purchase as a intellectual. It's a product that rich people buy to feel better about themselves. He's right. Dominican Republic bought a total of 20 million vaccines from Pfizer and AstraZeneca, which were supposed to arrive in March, never did. Our president complained because we paid for them, but they didn't keep their promise. In the end, we got vaccines from China and Pfizer delivered in the summer. Dave Gurr, thank you for the tier 1. All right, let's keep going with Jimmy Dore. Oh, God damn it.
Okay, so that's his response, which is, I'm going to say wrong. And why do I say it? Well, here's a headline says, what is driving the COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy in sub-Saharan Africa, which goes against what he just said.
No, it doesn't. Jimmy Dore cannot read. Jimmy Dore cannot read. That's not what it says. There are going to be a large percentage of people that are clamoring for the vaccine, and there's going to be a percentage of people that are vaccine hesitant in every society. So when Noam Chomsky says the global south right now is clamoring for vaccines, he's referring to the percentage of the population in those countries that are, in fact, without vaccines who desire them. Whereas in the West, our problem is getting people to take vaccines that are widely available. That's inequitable. We should be giving the vaccines to the people who want them around the world. So you can have both. You can have hesitancy, and people could also be clamoring for it. You goddamn idiot.
He said there isn't hesitancy, but there is. We know there is. Here's also who wants COVID-19 vaccination in 5 West African countries. Hesitancy is high and trust is low.
Literally none of those stories can refute what Noam Chomsky has said. The global south does include other countries than sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa, and hesitancy being high oftentimes is related to the fact that the vaccines aren't available. It's a cope. It's a psychological cope. Holy shit balls. You are an absolute asshole.
They're not making it available, Chomsky. Why do you think they're not making it available for free to everybody if it's what you say? Why wouldn't Bill Gates and all the big vaccine people make this vaccine available? I mean, right now, Moderna and Pfizer, they're making tens of billions of dollars. They can provide this vaccine to everybody. Why aren't they doing it, Noam? What is going on?
It's called capitalism, you stupid, dumb son of a bitch. You're supposed to be a leftist. They don't want to release the intellectual property so it can be manufactured by those countries. They want to own the manufacturing, the intellectual property, so that they can profit. And yes, providing a vaccine to every human being in the planet is expensive. That costs some real money, So they want to be the ones profiting from that. I want to see how he answers this question. This is a rhetorical question that he's planning on answering, right? He's not asking an actual question.
Why did Bill Gates tell Oxford to not give away their patent for their Why is all this happening? Chomsky doesn't seem to have a critique of fucking anything except repeat shitlib talking points.
Well, very few people in the what would pass for the left now have a critique of this anymore. It's strange.
My God, their brains are complete holes. Their brains are so smooth. They're incredibly smooth. The smoothest of brain. Okay. The critique is, I want to take the intellectual property from these companies and give it to the global south so that they can manufacture their own vaccines and provide it free of charge to their citizens. Right now, there's an intellectual property regime being enforced. I don't know if you remember this, Chad. Germany objected to Joe Biden saying that the intellectual property rights should be waived for the COVID vaccines. And the German Chancellor Angela Merkel objected, and so it was not approved. The intellectual property stuff was not waived for those vaccines. So instead, all right, we can't get everybody to agree because the conservative Chancellor of Germany objected to the waiving of the vaccines under the WHO. So we don't have the ability to do. Now we do, but Joe Biden's a coward. But let's leave that aside. The alternative is we pay these companies, they maintain their intellectual property. We pay them to manufacture these vaccines. They make profit. That's what they want to do. It's called capitalists. They're disgusting, vile pieces of shit. Of course, they just want to make profit off of human misery. What a surprise. But the vaccines are good, Jimmy. The vaccines work, Jimmy. And it's not just the capitalist vaccine. There's vaccines all over the world. There's vaccines developed in Cuba. There's a vaccine developed in China, a vaccine developed in Russia, vaccine developed in the UK. That's the AstraZeneca vaccine. A vaccine developed in Germany, the Pfizer vaccine. You have the Moderna vaccine developed through American government funding. You have all sorts of vaccines, public and private. The vaccines work. This is infuriating. The principled socialist position is ending vaccine apartheid. That's the right thing to do. Some hesitancy within these populations should not define access to whatever degree that's true or significant or minimize the global north's failures. What the The critical question is how to increase both supply and demand. A 2020 Africa Center for Disease Control survey in 15 countries found that while 79% of respondents would take a COVID-19 vaccine, vaccine hesitancy ranged from 4 to 38%. And here you can see vaccine hesitancy estimates. Why would Moderna and Pfizer sell the vaccine to rich countries who will pay a ton of money, but not to poor countries who can't? Chomsky has no explanation for this.
So watch how he gets this wrong.
So Jimmy Dore is, goddamn, Jimmy Dore is stupid. Is there more Jimmy Dore content? I need more. Do you follow the public health measures necessary to contain a dangerous pandemic that has literally killed millions of people? Millions of people. And Noam Chomsky has the right call. Noam Chomsky has the right opinion. And it's something that I tweeted. It's very simple. It's very easy. It's based.
Talk about folks having the freedom to, separate if they don't want to abide by these vaccine mandates. What would that look like on a practical level? Does that mean that folks need to just stay home and have like groceries delivered to them? Does it mean like separated communities of folks who are unvaccinated, or just, how do you think this would practically play out?
Same way as with people who say that I don't want to accept traffic rules. I suppose there were people who said it's an attack on my liberty to make me stop at a red light. It's government overreach. We don't want the state to have that power over my private life. Well, such people they should have the decency to remove themselves from the community. If they refuse to do that, then measures have to be taken to safeguard the community from them. Then comes the practical question that you ask, how can we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem. Of course, if they really become destitute, then yes, you'd have to move in with some measure to secure their survival, just as you do with people in jail, for example. But that's really not the issue.
All I can say about this is, first of all, incredibly based. Incredibly based. Noam Chomsky says the right response to the unvaccinated is to insist that they be isolated from society. Yes. Correct. You are correct, sir.
What are your thoughts on mandating vaccines?
Well, it's a mixed story. I think people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is not to force them to, but rather to insist that they be isolated. If people decide, I am willing to be a danger to the community by refusing a vaccine, they should then say, well, I also have the decency to isolate myself. Okay, I don't want a vaccine, but I don't have the right to run around harming people. That should be a convention. Enforcing is a different question. It should be understood, and we should try to get it to be understood. If it really reaches the point where they are severely endangering people, then of course you have to do something about it. So if smallpox turns out to become rampant again, and some people are insisting on running around public places where they might have smallpox, well, you've got to do something about it. We're not at quite that situation, but it's a similar one. So I think we should first attempt to establish conventions that will be understandable by people with some moral capacity, try to convince them that it's your right to refuse to get a vaccine, but then it is your responsibility to isolate yourself.
Many
So you don't
unvaccinated people are not anti-vax per se. I agree with you, actually. I've talked about this before. There are three groups of people who haven't gotten the vaccine. You have who I would call the lazy, people that are not anti-vaccine. They don't have any strong opinions. They just haven't gotten around to it yet. I would call those people lazy. Then you have people who are oppressed, meaning they don't have transportation. They're poor. They don't have the ability to get to the vaccination. There's no public transport. They have a jobs that they have to show up for. They don't have the time. They can't afford to miss even a single day of work because of vaccine side effects. And they want the vaccine. They just don't have the ability to absorb the costs of getting the vaccine. And then you have outright anti-vaxxers, right? And those are the people that will never take a vaccine because they believe that they're covered in Jesus's blood and the righteous will survive this scourge of the plague, and that, dying doesn't matter because they're going to meet the Lord. Or they believe in some sort of hippie woo bullshit about how modern medicine is actually developed by Satan to separate us from our spiritual forces that really touch every human from deep inside their soul, unless they're polluted by the nanobots. Okay, so those are the three groups: anti-vaxxers, oppressed, and lazy. The mandates really do target the oppressed people and the lazy people. Oppressed people, when you mandate it, you also have to provide accommodations, which means paid time off. It means providing vaccine, mobile vaccination centers. You have people that go door to door. You try to ameliorate those people that are oppressed so they can get access to the vaccine. Very important part of a mandate. The second part is the lazy people. Well, now they have an excuse. I have to get the vaccine or I'm not going to be allowed to watch Dune. I have to get the vaccine or I'm not going to be able to go to the football game. And you know what? I have to get the vaccine or I'm going to get fired. Those people get the vaccine. And United Airlines, when United Airlines mandated vaccines for their employees, one of the first companies in the country to do so, 99% of their 77,000 employees got the vaccine. They ended up firing like 200 or 300 people because they had a no excuse policy. So if 1% of the country is dyed in the wool anti-vaxxers who are willing to lose it all not to get a vaccine, well, then we're going to get herd immunity, okay? And so that's why mandates are even more necessary. So if you're saying, hey, a lot of unvaccinated people are not anti-vax, you're probably right. But guess what? That means we need to mandate even harder. When we saw this, good to counter the religious, with the Jehovah's Witnesses even support non-plasma-based vaccines. So, if you believe that there are people out there who are oppressed, therefore we shouldn't mandate vaccines, I disagree. We should be providing accommodations for oppressed people that don't have the vaccine yet, which means give them paid time off, which means provide their transportation to get the vaccine and to take them home, and to do everything we can to make getting vaccines as easy and as convenient as possible. Okay? That's what we should be doing. Not, well, some people can't afford to miss work, we can't mandate vaccines. Absolutely not. You are dead wrong. So those, that's the important part.
Others.
Folks having
Chomsky based as usual.